All right, thanks everyone for coming out early. We've got a panel today on decentralizing Hollywood, how NFTs affect the film and entertainment and TV industry. And we have a pretty good diverse panel today. We have people building all the way down at the infrastructural level that talks about how video and content flows through the decentralized internet. We have people building kind of tools around IP and artist coordination and content coordination. And we have people who are at the content side with actually producing films and content that we all consume. So we'll be able to talk about all of that. My name is Doug Petkanics. I'm the founder of a project called Livepeer. We're a decentralized video streaming infrastructure for Web3 that's been live on Ethereum for 4.5 years now. I'm also one of the authors of the ERC 721 standard, which kind of kicked off the whole NFT movement back in 2017, 2018. So it's good to see how much this event has grown over the years. Should we start with some introductions? Michelle?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Munson. I'm CEO and co-founder of Elluvio. And at some point, I want to say a little bit about us and what we do. A lot of people probably don't know about us, but in this space, we're pretty deep as far as content decentralization goes. The content fabric, our core protocol, is actually a full layer 1 blockchain and decentralized content storage and dynamic distribution network, which kind of sets it up for tokenization of media in many forms. It's been great to really be part of the NFT revolution over the last couple of years, because it's really gotten the whole content industry to think directly about the opportunities for engagement when audience can own into the media. And we've been involved in many interesting use cases now that are really starting to take media on-chain directly to the audience for partial ownership, retrade, that sort of thing. It's exciting times, even in spite of the challenges with the crypto market.
How's it going, everyone? Ian. I own a project founder of Greenlit. It's a rights and royalty management platform for scaling and franchising of IP permissionlessly through communities, and a model called proof of stake licensing, as well as owning a full functioning Metaverse cinema that offers NFT ticketing and content viewing.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Powell Bryan. I'm founder of Pixie. We are essentially a decentralized production studio. So we were originally building on the Terra blockchain before the DPEG, and we've got a pretty interesting story about that. But we create content. We're a group of content creators from film and television, and we wanted to bring that to the blockchain, and that's what essentially Pixie does. It's focused on crypto content and NFT content, but beyond that, utilizing NFTs to fund some of these creative projects.
All right, thanks for the introductions. I think everyone would love to hear a little bit about Terra. Let's come back to that at the end if we have time. We can focus on the topic at hand. NFTs kind of disrupting Hollywood, film, and media. So let's start at the content layer, because I think probably everyone in the audience is a content consumer. Powell, as a filmmaker, really curious how you see NFTs impacting, enabling new things in your creative process. Is this really kind of just about access to capital and fundraising things, or can NFTs actually affect the content experience yourself and how you think about the films you're making?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think so. As we started to set up our initial projects with different creators, a lot of people sort of came into the conversation thinking that NFTs were really just a way to grab money and raise funds for a project. And then I think what we tried to help them see is that it could be a lot more than that. First of all, like a good NFT project, if you're going to be successful at raising funds, I think we've seen most of the creators have had a pretty significant, brought people along on a significant journey that's entertaining, right? Like you're involved in this partially, potentially out of speculation, but then also because like it's great, fun art to interact with, and people talk about it and get excited about it, and what's your PFP and this and that, and all the other things that go with that. So we started to sort of break it down just in terms of like, hey, this could be a great way, NFTs could be a great way to raise funds for your project, but only if you do it in a way that's actually contributing something to the ecosystem that you're looking to raise funds from, right? And then expanding from there, like what are all the things that you can then do with it. So sometimes what we would do is just take like a project, start thinking about a project and backtrack towards who are the characters and what's a compelling way to launch this as an NFT project, right? And then looking at from there moving forward, like, okay, talking with content creators about like NFTs as a storytelling medium in and of itself, right? So it doesn't just have to be that it's what it is right now, right? So you're looking at the future where there's a lot more interactivity, a lot more video content in NFTs. And what we are hoping to do is really to be able to help filmmakers and video creators, content creators in general, be able to tell moving stories through NFTs as a medium. So yeah, I mean, I think it's not there yet. I mean, you've seen, mostly what we've seen is animations, right? But they're not necessarily telling a story. It's like, it's one thing right now, and I think the thought that it doesn't have at least the capability to change and to evolve significantly from here to where, you know, you've got content creators that are all of a sudden, like filmmakers that are all of a sudden like, oh, I didn't know you could like tell stories through NFTs that way. And I think that's really like what's the most exciting to us about the NFT space is really just this fact that there's this whole untapped sort of genre of content that really hasn't been able to experience or expose itself through NFTs.
I was really excited to dovetail on this about NFTs as a storytelling medium. So, I mean, I really think that this is just unlocking a whole new, you know, sort of not only generation but maybe era of possibilities. Just to tell a few. Right now, we're involved in the Moonsault property, which is WWE, Worldwide Wrestling's new NFT experience. And the whole point of that is to create a storyline that evolves through the actual transformation of the NFTs themselves in conjunction with the live events that happen that WWE has in their competitions over the course of a year, such as Hell in a Cell, Money in a Bank, etc. And what happens in this case is that the actual NFTs are not just collectible tokens, they actually transform as time passes into specific video from the archives based on who wins. There are also unique storylines in this that allow for gamification based on what happens in the tournaments, both on the male and the female side. I can't get into all the details of that, but essentially the NFTs themselves are transforming after they've been acquired by the buyers and as they're being retraded on the marketplace. And a corollary to this, I just wanted to mention too, we were involved with powering basically the Masked Singer television show, which ran also a similar kind of experience in tandem with the on-air TV show where the users were essentially participating in an NFT game that was voting on who would be unmasked on show and had rewards accordingly. And I think this is just the beginning. I mean, getting into full-length feature films that could have branching narratives where based on, you know, even how the community or DAO votes determines what comes next in the storyline. This kind of thing can be done with, you know, content that is effectively on-chain and can update this way.
Yeah, you know, we started talking about kind of innovative types of content and moving from pictures to videos to things that change over time. Michelle, I'm glad you talked about kind of Unchained Triggers for those sorts of events, DAO voting, governance processes, et cetera. I think it's really important to think about what Web3 and blockchain check kind of uniquely enables. Like you can always create content in different formats, right? That's not new. But what is new is when you actually have these kind of on-chain smart contract type events that deal with things like kind of audience interaction through coordination and voting, access controls through tokens and token gating. You know, these sorts of on-chain enabled primitives that didn't exist in the previous world, I think is really interesting. That brings us to kind of an evolution of the other side of kind of content. It's IP and content rights. And Ian, I know you're doing a lot of thinking about the future of what IP and content rights look like enabled by on-chain mechanics. I want to tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, so through Greenlit, we definitely believe that IP should be decentralized and allowing the franchise and the scalability of it while being able to maintain ownership and granular control over what IPs are created. So we're launching with a proof of stake licensing model that allows licenses to be granted through a staking mechanism granted tied to an NFT. So you can stake, get a license, and then the IP holder and creator will be able to maintain and have transparency on the royalties and revenue that is made through that specific IP, and that the scaling of any of the derivatives, merchandising, toys, games, novels, anything of that nature, by taking either on-chain or off-chain data, bringing it on-chain and kind of having it resolve within the payment layer and payout to the IP holder.
Great. So a lot of the content that we see flowing through these platforms today still comes from traditional kind of Web 2 off-chain sources, right? But I think the power of blockchain technology, again, it kind of opens up global permissionless access to participate in content creation, to participate in coordination on a global scale. Michelle, you're a layer one blockchain. Can you talk about how you think about Elluvio and other blockchain technologies enabling content creation to come more than just from traditional studios?
Yeah, well, that's the question. I'm always on the edge of my chair to jump up and shout out loud to everyone. So before I answer this, let me just say a little bit about my own background. I mean, I come into this space coming from building technology, core technology for basically content at scale over the internet most of my career. I started a company called Aspara, which actually the FAST protocol is on Wikipedia. You can read about it. It's a high-speed transfer protocol for bulk data. And Elluvio is the second company that I built, similar core team. In this case, what we really wanted to do was try to go after the biggest problems of large form content in its storage and distribution. And as many people know, the way that's sort of grown up hasn't changed a lot in 20 years from CDNs and also cloud stacks and whatnot. So, kind of getting to the point of this question, we felt like even before this NFT craze, we started this in summer 2017, the concepts brought it out in 2018. We thought that there could be an opportunity to essentially create a native protocol that would be decentralized for programmable content in all ways that it creates its own representations in that network. And that it might be possible to design a real-time protocol to support that could scale infinitely, right? And along with that, there's also the possibility to natively tokenize that, the versions of the content, the access control of the content, the policy that relates to it, so that all of that's effectively on-chain. And the ownership, the provenance, the re-encryption to get it to the audience is also effectively controlled with on-chain authorization. So all of that said, this kind of sets up a different set of possibilities as compared to Web 2 content distribution. And I think one of the biggest points of maybe education for everybody right now is that most of what's being done with NFTs and content is Web 2 content plus NFTs in some way married together. And what you lose with that is really all of the inherent on-chainness that you'd like to accomplish from tokenization. You'd like to ensure you have exclusivity, ownership, uniqueness, the ability to actually have the data provenance relate to the personalization of the media. And without that direct linkage, that's really not possible. And I think most people are just starting to realize this in terms of what the limitations of Web 2 plus NFT experiences, and we're excited to see where it goes.
Great, so we're going to see content that's more crowdsourced, it's more programmable, it becomes more creative in terms of the evolutions of what you can do with it. Let's talk about kind of one of the elephants in the room that's kind of hurting Web3 content from reaching the mainstream mass market the way that Web2 power structures enable, and that's distribution, right? I'm not talking about technical or physical distribution of the data. I'm talking about eyeballs. And how is this new content going to be consumed? Where is it going to be consumed? Ian, I think you've done some interesting experiments around new type of consumptive experiences inside metaverses, for example. Can you tell us a little bit about where you see people consuming, engaging with this content, and how that's going to grow?
Yeah, so we actually threw a film festival at our theater in the Metaverse that offers fully functioning programming, scheduling, and streaming of content and NFT ticketing and gating. And so through that, we plan to extend that out into like in real life physical festivals and be able to have this hybrid model of being able to watch content immersively, but also participate and interact with live Q&A, live streaming, live interactions that are happening in real time, in real life. And so, with that and being able to show content in the metaverse, right, it lends this hands to, the NFTs that we were talking about earlier, and the immersiveness and the interactiveness of kind of immersing folks within the content and immersing them within scenes, allowing them to have more of a say and interactiveness within the content that is showing. So, I think for the metaverse, I think it's super early, it's super new, but having that component combined with in real life experiences or active experience, we're focused on like a shared cinematic experience. So when you show up, if you're late, you're late. You can see the other people, you can interact with them, you can talk with them, but it feels and acts like a real movie theater. And so we wanted to create a form of distribution that was on chain, that can sit there and be programmable for the royalties and the splits of creative equity, if you want to have the back end be able to rewarding cast, crew, and things of that nature. So we built a ticketing contract that can do all that and supports the ticketing and gating. And so now we're working on expanding that and partnering with hybrid people who want to do hybrid experiences, both in real life and virtual, and kind of be an online component of that.
Cool. Powell, as a filmmaker, do you want your content in as many different distribution platforms, channels, and immersive experiences as possible, or do you want to have a controlled, end-to-end polished experience where it's just consumed in a lean-back manner on your couch or in a movie theater?
I mean, I think, content creators have their own opinions on this that would probably range. You hear people that really still want to have, a theatrical distribution. I think what we're talking about up here is giving people the options to do it all, right? So the option to have content that is not only funded but produced in a decentralized manner, and then distributed the same way, right? So I think at the end of the day, like most people probably that are content creators aren't going to care as long as there's enough eyeballs on it. And I think one of the things that'll be an interesting challenge is to really get those eyeballs in the space right now, and sort of, because I think for all of us, it's like we could talk about different platforms, different protocols, different L1s, all these different things that are in our space, because that's what we do every day. But at the end of the day, we want our users to just know that they're going to find your content easily and be able to watch it, right? So I think that's kind of like a part of what we do as well at Pixie is just content that helps onboard the next X number of users. So whether it's to any of the projects that's up here or other L1s or whatever, I mean, the goal is really to just give people this sort of experience that just gets them as fast as possible to what they want, right?
I wanted to add a little bit to that. I mean, the number one thing that we hear every day in all of these emergent experiences is trying to really mainstream the media consumption. And I think and this is something you guys would put a lot of emphasis on is that the wallet experience be transparent in the media consumption. And our custodial wallet is a media wallet, first and foremost, and even then, done album releases, live streams, in the NFT, episodes, you name it. But what I think is really the next step of this is really opening that entirely so that an experience feels very much like, some aspects of Web2 consumption and also just natively embedded into these emerging kind of metaverse experiences. That's number one. And then I think the second thing is also to this point of search and visibility, right? Given that easy consumption, the next is just making sure people can find it, and it's as ubiquitous as Web2's become over the last 20 years. And there's a lot we can do technologically about that, but I think it comes right after.
Great, yeah. We've been building Livepeer for over 5 years now, and initially we're just a decentralized streaming platform, right? And it's interesting to hear the feedback from the creators, the artists, that maybe decentralization alone isn't really a difference maker for them, right? They care where the eyeballs are, they care where the experience is. But as we've evolved over the years, we think about, again, what's kind of uniquely Web3 enabled. And sure, decentralization brings benefits like cost reduction, higher reliability through reducing points of failure, things that should enable you to create a better experience. But it's really the kind of interactivity with these on-chain mechanisms, the new primitives like the NFTs, the coordination through DAOs and voting, the ability to have things controlled by on-chain actions that create more compelling and engaging experiences for your fans who are part of owners of this content. That really is super powerful. Really looking forward to all the experimentation that's going to occur in the coming years now that these tools and infrastructures are available. Cool. So the last thing I want to touch on is just, we've talked about kind of the potential for new and innovative types of content and NFTs to disrupt Hollywood. Curious to get a point of view from everyone on the challenges or the blockers or the things that keep you up at night, standing in the way, pushing down this world.
Yeah, I'll go first because something that we focus on and I'm very aware of is the challenges of traditional legacy unions and their antiquated ways of wanting to have control over just the payment rails and how they distribute royalties and payments to folks. And so in building Greenlit, we are very conscious of traditional means and trying to meet people where they're at. And so having that fiat on and off ramp, then having a settlement layer that allows for the payment to be standard and not really mess or confuse or just have any of that friction of onboarding them. So really keeping what they know and they can continue that, and then having settlement layers to resolve and bring it on chain.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned payment rails, unions, things like contracts, things like the court systems that still play such a key role in the filmmaking and TV production processes are just huge externalities and huge costs that the entire industry bears in order to access all the coordination required by those things. And one of the powers of blockchain and Web3 is to dramatically lower those coordination costs through the programmability of smart contracts, and that the lowering of those costs should create tremendous benefits for the creators to be able to kind of cut out those middlemen, connect directly with their audiences, and monetize directly. So I think that's one of the disruptive superpowers. A couple of minutes left. Powell, I know you faced a pretty big challenge recently. As you said, you were building content around the Terra blockchain and ecosystem, and there's a little bit of a big blow up over there. I think that highlights the risks and challenges around speculation, volatility. You want to maybe tell the audience a little bit about some of the lessons learned through that?
Yeah, sure. So we were building on the Terra blockchain. We were actually filming a multi-part series on the Terra Jump hackathon in Chicago when the DPEG happened. So if you guys aren't familiar, Terra was a top 5 project, crypto project that completely collapsed, erasing billions of dollars, $40 billion of equity. And wiping out people's life savings and just decimating a whole ecosystem of projects. it was sort of like the first project that started what is now being called the contagion, which is like spread to like 3AC and Celsius was a part of, and you know, there's a number of other like major funding sources that were all impacted by this. But I think, so what we said is, you know, we were setting up on the Terra blockchain and had already started funding projects, created projects on that chain. And then we just turned, you know, the lens back at ourselves and said, hey, like we've just been through this crazy experience and like, what a, you know, let's make lemonade out of lemons, and let's do something that's really original. Not only create content about this chain and about this collapse, which is like, you know, if not the biggest crypto collapse in history, and certainly like, you know, vying for the title, but also do that in a way that employs a lot of these things that we just talked about, right? So like DAO voting, you know, composable content, just in terms of the NFTs that we're going to use to sort of fund the project, and being able to empower sort of creators to contribute, right? So all those things I think are pretty fun to play with. And I think that's what kind of, it'll be an interesting, I mean, I guess in this space, right, when, you know, we all sort of see it as a bit of the Wild West in a sense, right? It's like, you're pushing boundaries, you're innovating, you guys are all doing like incredible things in terms of technology. And then you're gonna have these setbacks, right? And so, you know, part of, I think, the general move as a founder, and even as a content creator is like, what do you do with your obstacles? That the obstacles are the integral part of every story, right? Every story that we see unfold on screen is all about obstacles and what does your hero do? So we just put ourselves in that position, and we're excited to tell the story and to be able to use it as a way to like revitalize people in a community that's been like really challenged.
I also think it's a great teaching opportunity or moment to sort of think about the content and its value intrinsically separate from the currencies and the payments. And one of the things that I see happening with the whole crypto downturn right now, which is fantastic to your main question about what do I worry about the most, is that the awareness of the intrinsic value of the content and tokenizing or decentralizing it is going way up. As the challenges and essentially the liquidity of the market go down, and at least in the creators space, both mainstream Hollywood and then also I think in creators in general. And it's, in my view, kind of a maturing of the blockchain, you know, sort of whole ecosystem as society goes, that people they've kind of started to get the idea of what's possible, and also the potential, you know, upside for creators and audience, and starting to really go after that as separate from what have been crypto markets. And to me, that's really where the long term is.
All right, so with that, we'll wrap it up. Onwards and upwards. Keep building, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.